Welcome back to Rome Boys. On this episode, we welcome to the upper room Father Mitch Pacwa.
Bienvenido.
Howdy, Nevin.
I'd say welcome to Texas, but you're already too comfortable here.
Yeah.
Well, we've had the great pleasure of spending a couple of days with you, Father, hunting on my cousin's ranch out south of here in Eden. You got yourself a red stag.
That's my first one, and it's one of the few I've ever actually seen. You don't see too many red stag, except in hunting videos from New Zealand, where they're
Right.
enormous.
Yeah.
But they're a beautiful critter and tasty. But this was a cull buck. For those who don't hunt, you cull out certain bucks that aren't going to give a good genetics to the females that they breed, and so that's what I was doing. It was kind of a help to the herd to make it stronger and healthier.
Yeah, you're doing my cousin a favor, so I'm sure he appreciates that.
Well,
more ways than one.
he did me a favor because it was also just a lot of fun to be out there.
It was.
Looking for the right one, because you don't just see something and shoot. You know,
Yeah.
you
Sure.
don't see you never just see a bush shaking and then shoot. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You
Could
might-
be one of my kids or
Yeah.
You know, a pet.
or more importantly, one of the cattle.
Hey,
Yeah,
very true.
Do that one, yeah, for sure.
See, that's why
Keeping it real.
He's in Texas. You get it.
It was a blessing to have Mass with you as well. So yes, it was.
Yeah. Well, it was. When I go out to hunt, I always bring my mass kit. My superiors knew that I needed a carb. That my last vehicle had a cracked engine block, and so that's not good.
Yeah.
No, you don't get very far with that. No.
Nope. So wanted to get me a little Corolla, and I said to him, "That's useless to me.
Yes.
I can barely get a dead pig in there, yet alone a deer. I need a truck."
You saw me
But-
drive up in my Corolla and barely made it. So.
Yeah, that's it. And so, having a truck, I also bring not only what I need to hunt with, but also my mass kit. And always everywhere I go, we celebrate Mass, and that's to me daily Mass is just essential.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, it was awesome being
Yes.
in the audience of 3 people in the Mass and looking out over your shoulder, and I see zebra and
wildebeest.
wildebeest.
Where are we?
Yeah, that was great. This is West Texas?
yeah.
No.
Horned
Well,
oryx scimitar.
Well, this is another thing that a lot of folks don't understand about hunters. Red stag were in pretty high danger. We're in their home turf of Europe.
Right.
And then there are a lot of other critters that are also endangered. They had scimitar oryx.
Yes.
Very ancient animal. As a matter of fact, when you look at the hunting camps of Neanderthals, they were hunting oryx.
Oh, yeah.
Way back, 300,000 years ago.
Wow.
Because Neanderthals predate Homo sapiens. They're not our
Lineage.
They're not our lineage. They're not. They're a different group. But they.
Well, they were going extinct in their native countries
Yeah.
until they came to Texas, and now they're thriving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were a few Arabian oryx that got into Israel, and they sent them over to the United States, and now they're flourishing.
Yes.
They're almost all gone.
Oryx, not orcs from Lord of the Rings.
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boys.
No way.
And
Oryx.
no, not orcs, and not Orec vacuum cleaners. These are different. They're tastier than your vacuum cleaners.
That's true.
If it's anything like what gets into mine. So this is,
I appreciate you saying that. I mean,
but it's true with all these beasts. And zoos have breeding programs, but when they have too many and other zoos don't need them, they just put them to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Now they're selling them to ranchers and increasing the herds of these different critters that are at risk. And in fact, Texas A&M, God bless them, because they have a great veterinary school and also a program for not only farm animals but for wild animals.
Exotics, for
Yeah,
exotics.
well, exotics and native. They just take care of all the
all
all the
Absolutely.
wild animals, and
Leading vet school.
they keep a record of what is endangered, how endangered, and this helps the ranchers who raise these exotics to know what to increase, what not to kill. Some of them you can't shoot
Right.
until the herd gets back, and then the hunting is what finances care for these exotics.
Yes.
You don't charge admission to a ranch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yet.
Not yet, no.
They haven't been federalized yet. And so,
Well-
but it's the hunting that finances the feeding and care and the breeding programs for these different critters. A lot of folks have no clue about that. But in countries where they are not allowed to be hunted, they're extinct.
Yes.
And where they're allowed to be
Interesting.
hunted, there is this motive, namely hunting, to maintain the herd
What-
and keep diversity going.
This is kind of a paradigm because if there's a value on that animal, even a monetary one, they're more coveted and cared for, and that's kind of a paradigm because
Yes.
a lot of people don't understand that concept. They think, oh, you're making money on these animals. Well, it's preserving their entire existence. And I think maybe some people who look at the hunting world and the idea of capitalistic ideology, and they're trying to mesh the two together. But I love it from your perspective, Father, because you're a Jesuit. And, it's the mission of the Jesuit is reconciliation to God through God, humanity, and the environment.
Right.
Is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the core of it goes to St. Ignatius' opening of the spiritual exercises. The spiritual exercises are a 30-day retreat that St. Ignatius developed out of his own 2 years as a hermit. After his initial conversion, he had been wounded at the Battle of Pamplona. It was just 500 years ago in May of 2021. So it was in May of 1521 that he was wounded. Cannonball shot right between his legs, nicked him, and didn't. But had it hit his leg, would have taken it off. But it nicked him and broke the leg, and that recuperation time is when he experienced conversion. It took 2 years to recuperate.
Yeah.
The French enemies that had shot the cannonball so admired his courage that they carried him to the Loyola Castle
Wow.
in a litter. But unfortunately, it set before they could set it. The skin
bones.
healed,
The
the
bones
bones
set it,
healed
Sure.
before they could set it properly with the doctor, and it had a bump in it. And if you remember, men used to wear these long hose, these long socks,
Yeah.
and shorter trousers, that just went to their thigh, and so there was a bump, and Ignatius was something of a ladies' man.
Hello, ladies, man? Yeah, you got the ladies, man. Now, what's your query?
And he didn't think that bump was quite so attractive.
Okay.
He was pretty vain by his own admission. He prided himself on having really neatly cut fingernails and stuff like that. Back when they were cutting fingernails with a sheep shear, with those scissors. And so he really groomed himself and, was known as a ladies' man. Apparently, one of our historians said he even had a child, but wasn't quite married to the mother. There's
The Augustine kind of story there.
yes, and so during that recuperation, he had a really bad fever from the infection. He had the doctors go in and saw that piece of bone off. Now, remember, there's no anesthetic.
Right.
Oh,
And,
my.
this is a wake, maybe a good shot of brandy or something, but
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, tough guy.
Yeah. And it still didn't look quite right, but it got infected, of course.
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand bacteria and germs.
Yes.
So he had a bad fever from that wound. And during the fever, Our Lady and St. Peter appeared to him in his room. And it's that's when he started to have his conversion. Also, he asked his sister-in-law, because his brother was now Lord of the Manor. He was the 11th son, so he wasn't going to inherit anything other than what he won in war and stuff, and from the emperor. So he, his sister-in-law, he asked for some books about chivalry and battles and fights and stuff. And they didn't. He said, "I don't have any of those, but I got a Life of the Saints and a Life of Christ."
Yes.
He wasn't interested for a long time. But he got so bored that he started reading that, and that's when he also noticed that as I thought about fights and battles and strategy and pretty damsels who I would put in distress like I did the last one or whatever, he said, I enjoyed that, but then it left me flat. But then when I thought about the different saints and I thought about the life of Christ, I felt same joy, but it lasted. And it took him a number of months to notice that pattern. And then he said, this is where the real joy is, and this is pseudo.
Consolation, desolation, the kind of first stages of that. Yeah.
And so, and he had that conversion with the vision of Our Lady and of St. Peter. So when he did heal up, saddled up an old mule and rode over to make a pilgrimage at Montserrat, which is a shrine of Our Lady, one of the many black Madonnas in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
You know why they're black?
No.
You know what that is in the Bible?
Oh.
That's in your Bible.
Okay.
Because there's a line in the Song of Songs that says, I am black but beautiful.
Oh.
And so they apply the Song of Songs. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who was the originator of chivalry. He was also an old soldier. Not old, he was a young soldier actually, in his 20s. But as a soldier, he tried to combine being a soldier with Christian faith, and he was the one who came up with chivalry.
Wow.
The originator of that. And the chivalrous knight, because remember, in St. Bernard's day, they were just getting over being barbarians.
Right.
And they hadn't quite gotten over all of it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of it. So Ignatius saw the saints and Our Lady as members of the royal court of Christ and Christ as the king. And so he took that. And so he went to Our Lady of Montserrat, where this image of the Black Madonna still is there.
Yeah.
And he left his sword there and his clothes. Exchanged his clothes with a beggar, like Francis. Again, he had read that, in the life of Francis, in that book of the Lives of the Saints. And he imitated that and became a hermit. There's one little story about bad discernment as he's going on his way over there. He came up on a Muslim, because remember, Spain had been ruled by Muslims for a good 700 years. And there were still a few around. And this Muslim was riding horses. He's on his mule. And the Muslim made an untoward comment about the Blessed Mother. And that was insulting.
Yeah.
And so Ignatius said, Lord, I'm going to give free rein to my mule. If the mule follows the path the Muslim took, I'll kill him tonight. If it doesn't, I'll go on to Montserrat. Like Balaam's ass, his mule had good sense. Took him to Our Lady, and he realized years later that was not the way you discern God's will, leaving it up to a mule.
Live and learn.
That makes you the dumbass.
There's a story in the Quran. It's interesting. You talk about that because it's in English it's tie up your camel and leave the rest to God. Because a Muslim walked into a shop, and the guy said, "Hey, your camel's not tied up outside," and he's like, "Oh, God will take care of it," and yet he's like, "Oh no, tie up your camel, then leave the rest to God. You got to do your part, right?"
Yep. There you go.
Use your logic.
So
Your discernment.
That'd be an interesting way of evangelizing. What'd you say about my mama?
Well,
My donkey led me here. I'm going to kill you.
So after he had left his sword and clothes, gave his clothes to the beggar and left his sword after an all-night vigil, like knights do. That was one of the things that St. Bernard did. You go to a chapel of Our Lady, and you place your sword there in an all-night vigil. He made that all-night vigil, and then took up the livery of Christ instead of the livery of the human kings. If he took up the livery of the Emperor Charles V at that time, it would have been with the signs of royalty and of Castile and Aragon and all that stuff. But he took the livery of Christ, which is the clothes of a beggar. And he went over to this cave at Manresa, not too far away, asked a Dominican to be his spiritual director. And he went through lots of struggles. He had scrupulosity and a variety of other difficulties. But in that process, he, grew in holiness. And that was his experiences there, as he wrote them down, were the basis for writing down the spiritual exercises. And, he didn't write with, the eloquence of a well-educated man. He wrote basic, simple language to the point, and that was it. And he kept refining that over the next years till he died in 1556. But 56, 56. And so he kept on that refinement, and that becomes the basis of a 30-day retreat every Jesuit makes twice in his life. Once in novitiate, your first year as a novice, and before you take your final vows, or for your first vows, and then again after about 10, 15 years or so, before you take your final vows.
So you've done it twice?
Yeah, sure.
And have you directed any?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have directed a number of people in the spiritual exercises.
It's a great experience. I was in a seminary, did a 3-day, 8-day, and a 30-day. It'll change your life.
Yeah, it is.
It
really is. And Ignatius got into trouble because after he was a hermit, he realized that he wanted to share this with others. Spanish Inquisition was a little nervous in those. They're a little, I don't want to say trigger happy. It was more axe happy.
Oh, I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And so they...
and Ignatius is saying, set the world on fire, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty bold.
And they were afraid that he was a Protestant. Now, they would investigate what he said, investigate his writing, and always find him innocent. But they said, you can't do this. You're not a priest. And so he started to study, went to grammar school, and was studying with the first graders to learn Latin. He knew he could write Spanish, but he couldn't write Latin. So he went to first grade, and he was already about 30 years old.
Wow.
Because he was born in 1491 and 92.
Talk about a humbling experience.
Yes.
There's a 30-year-old man, and I'm gonna go spend.
Well, there's a whole movie about this. It's called Billy Madison.
I never saw it.
Adam Sandler, don't watch it.
Not a highly recommended one.
No.
Never mind.
Unless you have some time that you want to waste.
Well, what is Ignatius doing at recess with all these little first graders?
Now you're all in big, big trouble.
I think 16th century recess was a little bit different than today.
I bet so.
But he would still give retreats. And so eventually he realized Spain is not a good place for me. The Inquisition is just too hot on my case. So he went to Paris
Oh yes.
and studied at the University of Paris. And his
Went from first grade to a university.
well, he finished enough Latin to get over.
Oh,
there.
good,
They didn't have the same kind of
Yeah, system.
process.
Sure.
But his roommates were a couple of guys that became his first.
Yeah. Awesome,
disciples.
guys.
Yeah, one of whom was Francis Xavier,
Yes.
and he roomed with him. And Xavier was the big man on campus.
Oh.
He was the big man. He was an athlete, the running champ
Oh.
at University of Paris. He was on the running. They didn't have teams in those. They just
They competed.
but they had races.
Yeah, there was lots of
and he
competition.
won the races and stuff on a regular basis. And so they were roommates. And Xavier's family was also Basque. Ignatius was in Spain, but he was a Basque. Mm-hmm. And that's a different group than the Spanish. They were there before the barbarians who became the Spanish were there. A lot of German tribes entered into Spain during the barbarian invasions. The Vandals, they
right.
conquered Spain,
Yes.
and the Suevi. You don't hear. Matter of fact, I've been thinking about this. If you ever run into some trouble with your football teams, and they don't like you to be called by different Native American tribes, the barbarian tribes from Europe don't care.
That's for option. Yeah. The Washington football team, you can take that. The
Washington Barbarians, yeah.
Yeah.
The Vandals, whatever.
Well, the Washington Suebi. You know,
There you go.
That's not Patrick Swaby.
no, it was probably named after them.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if that's his real name.
Swayze.
I don't know if it's his real name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Stage
You
name.
can't tell in Hollywood what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
And so, but if it is, that's probably from the Suebi. At any rate, they, have all this. They're a different group. Basques are a different group, but part of the Basque country is in France, and part of it is in Spain. Xavier's family fought on the French side, and Ignatius' family fought on the Spanish side. Now that's going to be a little tense.
Sure.
This is like having a U of Texas and a Texas A&M family
Yeah.
in the same room.
Great analogy.
For years.
Great. We understand.
I know it.
Totally.
I know it.
You know what's also interesting about this point is that you have Christopher Columbus coming to the Americas, but the Jesuits, it was French that came to the Americas, right? The first Jesuits were from France, right?
In North America,
Maryland area.
No, not really. There were some Jesuits that went to Spanish Florida,
Oh, okay.
who later on were martyred.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Now-
Mostly by the English.
Mostly by the English.
Yeah, but that's another story.
Now, the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And there were some who came to Virginia, and they were also martyred. But the French ones are the ones we know of as the North American martyrs. The Spanish martyrs are not as well known. But there were Jesuits in Florida, and of course there were a number of Jesuits that went to Latin America.
You know, I just mentioned that because, I hadn't heard the Spanish side of it. You could tell I was thinking only of the French, but the French gave America its first loan to start the country financially because we were in the pits. We were
We started off in debt. We're still there.
we got out
Haven't
of it.
recovered. Once.
Even more so.
Yeah.
Though one of the first Franciscans to go to Mexico after Cortez.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't right with Cortez. It was a little bit after him. That Franciscan was named Ignatius Loyola.
Oh.
It was St. Ignatius' nephew.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah.
Wow. Did not know that.
How
I know the
cool.
Franciscans like to tell me that story. So
Round
I
two.
remind them, well, that's fine and dandy, but one of the first Jesuits was named Francis.
It works.
Come on, bring it on, Franciscans. Let's go. See, in fact, that's where I always will tease the friars at EWTN. I say, difference between a Franciscan and a Jesuit. Franciscan walks in the woods and he sees Bambi. I walk in the woods, I see backstrap steak and a new pair of boots.
This I understand.
We speak that language, yes.
Yes.
You know, I enjoy your conversation because I think a lot of times we think, oh, the ordained and the religious orders and all of this is too far outside of the layman's reach. But the influence on the home that we live in and, and your understanding of it, the influence of who we are as farmers and, ranchers and hunters and, it's really the root of how we got started. And these people were brave people. They put their life on the line. The Jesuits that came over, I mean, they were on a mission and they were martyred and they were scalped by, natives. And it was tough.
Yep. And here's one of the things that, we started off talking about creation.
Oh, yes.
And how this key notion goes back to these spiritual exercises that St. Ignatius learned in this struggle with his own conversion in the process of life. He said that in the first principle and foundation, that everything is created for the glory of God and everything is good. Now, he didn't make that up.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure.
This is something that comes from Genesis chapter 1, that as soon as the Blessed Trinity prepares creation, you know how it says in the first verses, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'ha'aretz hayeta tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei hamayim v'ruach Elohim merchefet al pnei hamayim. Remember that? And
No, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I say it all the time. Yeah.
Your kids speak Hebrew.
But it's how in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was a wasteless void, and the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters. Now, by the way, there's one Catholic translation that's not quite right. I would even say kind of dumb, where it says a mighty wind hovered over. No. It says the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, hovered over the water. And that word hover, merachefet, is a word used only one other time in, I believe it's Deuteronomy 32, where it refers to an eagle hovering over its nest, in order to induce its young to start learning to fly. They'll hover over, flapping their wings to encourage their young to start to fly before they pick them up and throw them out the nest.
It's like a drawing up.
Some of you.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that preparation, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And every time God creates something, he says it's good, except for the firmament. On the second day, he created the firmament to separate the waters above from the waters below. And he doesn't say it was bad, just didn't say it was good.
He didn't.
Now,
it wasn't good yet because he hadn't finished.
No. You're missing the whole issue.
I missed it.
Yep. What's in Jewish countings? What's the first day of the week?
Saturday?
No, that's the seventh day.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
That's
Sunday.
the Shabbat. So first day is
Sunday.
and the creation of the firmament happens on the second day, which is
Monday.
This proves it's in the Bible. Even God doesn't like Mondays.
Amen. Let's just get rid of it.
Oh, man, you had me on the hook the
Somebody's
entire time.
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Yeah, I don't know. You had me on the hook the whole time. I know. Oh, this is going to be great. Yeah. That's a joke. You got me.
But it's
this is why I don't only hunt, I fish.
Yep, he got me.
Reel them in. And so, but that God's creation is good. And then the issue for us human beings is that do we use creation for the greater glory of God? This ought to be our goal, that it's all good. And St. Ignatius says that's true of a long life or a short life, of sickness or health, of riches or poverty. Any one of those is a good.
Yeah.
Didn't say comfortable. You didn't hear me say comfortable.
Nope. You didn't say comfortable.
But it is a good. And the Lord, the greater glory of God can show through any one of those gifts, whether it's a long life or a short life. That's why we have a number of saints who are very young.
Yeah.
Some of them died as martyrs. Some of them died of disease. This young man that's they're looking to have as the patron saint of the internet was just a young teenager. Was he 15, 16?
Carlo,
Yeah, Blessed
16,
Carlo.
I think so.
Yeah, Blessed Carlo. And it's good to have a young person as a patron of the internet because the internet is so typically a trap for young people when they go searching in the wrong places.
Sure.
And sinful places. And this is something that we have to keep in mind about life in general. You have our Lord chose poverty, but there are a number of saints who were very wealthy, but they used their wealth and power for the greater glory of God.
They weren't attached to it.
And there are other people who are absolutely destitute poor, and they use that poverty for the greater glory of God. And then there's farmers who keep getting poor.
Amen.
Ranchers are right there with them, like the one rancher who won the lottery and got a few $1 million. Said, "What you gonna do? You gonna go retire?" I said, "No, I'll just keep on ranching until it's all gone."
Won't take long.
It won't take long.
Yeah.
But it's this is part of life.
Yes.
Sure.
And
Except where
all
you're
that's
at,
good.
right? Be where you're at, and God
yeah,
can
exactly.
bless that.
Exactly. But also be alert. This is one of the things I always learned in hunting. You stay alert. What is it the Lord might ask you to do? Because there are different promptings of our Lord and different situations show up. So Ignatius didn't want to stay in trouble with the Inquisition, so he moved to to France, to Paris, and there he got his first 10 disciples. 9, so it became the first 10 Jesuits.
In the way that God calls you, Father, and it seems as if your apostolate with Ignatius Productions, that's kind of front line. You talked about the Blessed Carlo with the internet, right? I mean, that's frontline stuff.
Yeah.
And in the media, that can be the front line, right? And to have these conversations.
Exactly. And I'm always happy to say I have zero training in media. I've never had a course in radio, television, and these verkachte computers. Who understands them? And
So anybody can do it, is what you're getting at?
Well, I guess, I don't know, but it's for instance, I look at the folks at EWTN. Mother Angelica always would say to me and to audiences, I didn't know how to adjust the color on a TV, let alone run a TV network. But this is what happened, that the Lord used us who have no training in it to do what we do. And and it didn't matter to her how many people we reached. She didn't care. People would always ask her, "Well, what are your ratings like?" She said, "I have no idea. I put this out there with
And
Jesus."
why does that matter?
Yeah.
You can reach just one person.
Yeah. And and there are plenty of folks were on their way to commit suicide, and their guardian angels got them to turn on the radio or TV, and they changed their mind. That's dealing with saving a soul right there. Or people on their way to commit abortion or something. These truly life and death issues, as well as the more normal kind of conversions that take place.
So as Chris pointed out, you're kind of in the front lines. You're out in the media. You're out up front. Do you find that you're hindered in any way from saying things that you want to say, or that hold you back?
Now and again, they sort of pull the reins up on me. Make sure I don't get too crazy.
Oh yeah.
They for instance, at the network, there are a lot of our viewers who don't really, think that hunting is a good idea.
Really?
Oh yeah. I always like to tell the story of this lady. I was giving a retreat up in Staten Island, New York, and this lady came up to me and said, "Father, how can you kill those poor deer?" And so I said, "Well, ma'am, do you go to the grocery store and buy meat?" She said, "Well, yeah." I said, "All right. Difference between you and me is that you get hired killers to do it for you. You're like a mafia don. I'm just a local hitman." And she said, "That makes sense."
She's gonna slap you or something.
No, they just talk like that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I can say
Meet them where they are. Who knows who this lady was?
Exactly. Exactly.
as a
She was so sweet. She really was a delight. But she just said, "That makes sense."
well, I'll say that to that point, hanging out with you for a few days and being able to see your appreciation for the animals, it's I can attest to it firsthand. So it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and I just don't buy red meat in the store. I buy chicken. I'll buy that because if you say that you hunted that chicken, your neighbor might come hunting you.
Those are called varmints.
Yes, but other my red meat I buy and I butcher myself and
much healthier.
It's not only that. I love the whole process from choosing the animal, taking the shot, and doing all the cleaning and skinning, and then I butcher my own meat.
Yes.
That whole process, and then I cook it and eat it. And share it with friends and people who need meat.
Yeah.
I love doing that. I love
Absolutely. Yeah, you shared of a priest, maybe a diocesan priest who is a rancher and has cattle and provides that for the pantry there at the church, right?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, he buys these heifers that won't nurse their calves. They kick them off. And sometimes even go after them. They're just mean heifers.
Yeah.
I won't say what big city I think they might be from, but
Please. See, this is the controversy that Joe talks about. We got to rein you in.
I know. See, that's what I mean. That's what that sort of hold me back. But anyway, he buys these mean heifers, cheap. Because they can't breed
guys
them.
are trying to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because they're dangerous.
Exactly. And they're dangerous to the other heifers.
Yeah.
And so you get these bad girls together. He takes them out. They graze on this one ranch. There's a family that had been in law enforcement, and they don't raise any cattle themselves. They just want to be off on a ranch in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And they're just calming down after years of law enforcement because that is tough.
Tough, yeah.
Not only now, but it's been tough all along because you're dealing with mean, bad people.
Yes,
That's all there is to
It kind
it.
of changes your outlook on people. When
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to deal with the worst of the worst every day.
Yep, and they were real serious law enforcement. They're having to deal with the worst.
Oh, yeah.
So at any rate, he puts them out there and they let them graze on their ranch because it's mostly empty land. And so I went out there to give a mission over at St. Matthew's Parish in Gillette, Wyoming.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple other ranchers that he and I both know and put our horses up in there and rode out to this place where he's got the cattle, rode up above the rim rock and looked for the cattle and found them and drove them down and separated out a bunch of them to bring in to butcher. And the priest butchers them himself and puts that for the food pantry. And, since there's been a change of administration, the workers in the coal fields are getting out of work.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that people are hurting.
Yes.
A lot of people are hurting.
Yeah,
And and they need meat for their children. So
Absolutely.
this is a great way to do it. And some of the parishioners set up an old container, and they outfitted it with a butcher shop and a cooler.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So he's got that meat up in there, and it's just a great way to help out folks that just needs food.
Absolutely.
That's man, that's great. That's great. Talk about just trying to find your place and
provide a need.
God calls you.
Yeah, and it's grass fed. You have to go to some of these whole check market stores to find grass fed beef
good
and pay
stuff,
extra.
Yeah.
when
For them to eat
cheaper.
grass. Yeah, for them to eat grass. Yeah.
What's the deal?
But he he gives them good grass fed beef and tasty, and that's good quality cattle. It's
They're just mean.
Yeah,
They're just
that's
mean.
it. Well, y'all, some of you have some red heads, right?
Oh, God. Yeah, almost all of them.
Well, he's got some red Angus, and they're just
yes.
ornery.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Talking about cattle and
It's raining in there, Father. Hang on.
yeah. I'm gonna change
Don't go
the
there.
subject. Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
switch
here we go.
topics.
See,
Making our wife and kids.
Yeah. But
See, this is the problem of being on this podcast. Is
Yeah.
that the crowd's a little low. I'm starting to jump over it. They put me on high fence over at EWTN.
We let go of the reins here. Yeah.
you're kind of gazelle in your ways.
Oh man.
Or Mustang.
Yes,
For sure.
But I was talking to a guy who's local here, and he says he's got the purest bloodline from Christopher Columbus of the Texas Longhorn, and he so passionately went on to say that without the Texas Longhorn, North America would not exist in its population as it does today.
Yep.
Wow. And it's just very interesting. And you talked about, grass-fed. He said in his production with like a Red Angus or a Black Angus, they're not as efficient as these Texas Longhorns. That's why they drove them all the way up to Chicago and, Alaska.
Kansas City.
And Kansas City, yes. And Goodnight Loving Trail and all of these cattle drives. But I thought it was very interesting that it's just right down the road here where we have some of the purest breed of Texas Longhorns. And again, back to, the Spaniards bringing them over. And what he talked about specifically, and one of the only places that you can get it, this pure bloodline is right here in a little town called Brownwood, Texas, down the road.
Yeah.
Yes, you pass through it.
Sure.
But they sell a hamburger there that's of their cattle, and it's an organization that they fight with the other organization of Texas Longhorns because they think they have the real Texas Longhorns. But what they said is to your point about buying chicken and hunting red meat, that this cattle is it's healthier than chicken. And it's cattle. It's red meat.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm excited. They invited me out to go eat some Texas Longhorn. So
Well, speaking of which, I always like to talk about this for folks who have daughters, which you all do.
yes, 6 of them.
Yeah, 6 daughters.
Yeah, God bless you. We have
I always like to tell families that have daughters that, about how something I said to a lady I met up in Canada. I was at Niagara Falls speaking at a conference, and this lady and her boyfriend were in their late 30s, and I was at the elevator in between lectures, and she said, "Oh, can you marry us?" And he's looking like, "Oh." And I said, "No, ma'am, I have no jurisdiction. This is Canada. I'm an American, and I don't have any jurisdiction here of any kind in the church or outside." But then I said, "Ma'am, do you know how to domesticate wild cattle?" And she said, "No, why would I know that?" I said, "Well, let me tell you about it. What you do is you round them up, and then you drive them for 3 days. And in those 3 days, you don't let them go get a drink of water. You just keep driving them. And then at the end of 3 days, they are dragging. On the 4th day, you lead them to water. And at that point, they're yours." I said, "Ma'am, men are no different." And
yeah.
the man said to me on this level, "Why are you telling them our secrets?" But see, people always ask, "What do you learn out there?" Well, I learn a lot of good stuff.
True nature. The
Yep.
understanding of
That's great.
yes, God's
You
creation.
never know where these conversations are going to go.
Never. Unpredictable.
Neither do I.
For sure.
So, you were called to be a Jesuit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where did that calling come from? I mean, from God, obviously.
Yeah,
but-
yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah. You know, I had gone to public school in first and second grade, and I'd gone to 6 schools in first and second grade. My dad was a truck driver, and we drove around the country. So I went to schools in Florida and Colorado and Ohio and Illinois. So we went around different places, and when we finally settled back in Chicago, the company he worked for told him to move to Canada for 6 months without bringing us, and he wouldn't do it. So we settled back in Chicago, where we came from, and went to Catholic school for the first time. You know what tuition was in those days? $2 a month.
Oh my goodness.
Now, and that was still hard for my parents to pay, but they knew it was worthwhile. So they sent us to Catholic school. And we, while I was getting ready for my first Holy Communion in 3rd grade, I, just felt, that's just before receiving our first communion, that's when I first felt the call to be a priest. The sisters and priests were really good. Now, I could tell that they loved us in a way different than the public school teachers, who were not bad, and they were good teachers. I really had a lot of respect for my, grammar school teachers in public school, and they did a good job. But there was another quality that the sisters and the priest in the parish brought that I had not seen before, and it wasn't something I could name. You just had a sense of it, and it's not as if they were all, "Oh, you sweet kids." No, it
They were
was.
tough.
I always talked about how we had 50 kids per class. 50 to 55. 55 was the limit. And we had 4 classrooms per grade.
Wow.
And this was, post-war baby
Packed
boom.
house. Wow.
And, this is just a parish school. I think we had about 1,200 kids
Wow.
in the school, between 11 and 1,200 kids.
Early
No,
60s?
50s.
Oh, 50s, yeah.
This is in the
right.
50s. And I'm old.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking First Communion and.
That was 1958. I made my first communion.
Amen.
And it was really cool. I still have 2 buddies that I made first communion with. We're still friends after all these 64 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep, it's really great. And at any rate, that's when I felt my vocation, and I never changed my mind. Up until then, the only thing I wanted to be was a cowboy.
Okay.
I just loved cowboy. I loved Colorado more than any place
Oh, my
we
goodness.
lived.
Yeah.
We lived in Colorado Springs.
Okay. Yes.
And it was a small town back in
Yes,
50.
right. Yeah. It's
We were
changed
there
so
in
much.
56. No, 55. 55 we were there because I was 6 years, turned 6 over there. Got my first boots and first cowboy hat.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And a 6-shooter.
Colorado Springs, Colorado. There's a convent up there.
Oh.
There's
there
a.
back-
I don't know that it's in the Springs, but
Well, it's
I think
In
it's
that
up.
direction. Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
area, yeah.
Yeah.
Was
and
it there at that time? Or
Not that I knew of.
yeah.
I was just a little kid. I didn't care about
Yeah.
Right.
nuns.
That
I wanted to go
wasn't on the
shoot
radar.
something.
Right.
I had a real cap gun, and it was loaded.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
But after that, I just wanted to be a priest. I haven't changed my mind since I was 8. I went to high school seminary, and I knew that my parents couldn't help too much with tuition, and my dad didn't want to either, because he didn't want me to be a priest at all. Wow. He really was against it, and when I was in high school, I got jobs and worked for him. Sometimes he had a cool business. He had a truck. He would put these matrices on there, and they would melt white walls onto black wall tires. You took the tire off the vehicle, sanded it down with a brush, and then melted this latex white wall on it. See, they used to have stuff that you painted on, but it always came off.
Yeah.
But white walls on a tire increased the value of a car in those days by $75 to $100 or more.
Black wall tires, they blend into the pavement. But these white wall tires, they say, look at me, here I am.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I keep thinking there's no more white walls.
No, you
don't see them anymore. But back then that was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
And so I did that with him, and then I got a job at a catering hall as a busboy. And
what is it he wanted you to do?
almost anything. He wanted me to. He had a pretty good idea that I was the only one that was going to go to college or finish high school. My brother and sisters dropped out, and the last brother finished high school, but by the hair of his chinny chin chin before he could shave.
Wow.
And so, they just weren't into it. So he wanted me to go on to be a doctor or a lawyer or something,
Sure.
Yeah. So he didn't care,
Something
but not a
that was
priest.
gonna make some money.
Yeah, and give him grandkids. That's the other thing too. So I started to take that money that I earned at my jobs, and I invested it in the stock market when I was 15.
Interesting.
I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, it's early.
Wow.
It wasn't legal either, but I think I already mentioned that we were in Chicago.
Enough said.
And I knew a banker at the parish, and I said, "Well, could you buy stock for me?" I said, "Well, I can, but you're not going to sue me if you lose the money." I said, "Nope. If I lose the money, I lose it. But I just need to help to buy it." So I bought stock, and like the first stock I bought later on went from $50 investment to $550 investment.
Oh, wow.
So I did okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I spent time. I would read the stock market reports. I'd go to the. I'd get the Republican paper. We were stone Democrats, but I would. Get the Republican paper because they had better business news.
Okay.
And I'd read about the different companies, look at the ratio between price of stock and dividend payment, just measuring that, and just check stocks for a long time and then buy it. And so, and in fact,
years old.
as a junior in high school, I won second prize in the school science fair for my exhibit on how the stock market works.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so I was into it, and I got other guys involved in. We were investing in stock, including one of these guys that I grew up with. He bought stock with me in National Tea, which later on became some of the Publix.
Publix.
United with it was bought out by Publix and some other routes and a few others.
Wow.
At any rate, as a junior, though, right when I was doing that science thing, I began to realize I'm really focused on the stock market stuff. And I began to be afraid that I was going to be so focused on my stock portfolio that I would neglect my priestly mission.
Amen.
I thought that was going to be, and I said, I don't know that I'm strong enough to be a diocesan priest, because I was in the. See, I started in the diocesan seminary when I was 14.
Yeah, high school seminary.
Yeah.
Gosh.
High school seminary during Vatican Council.
Well,
the council
yeah,
was still going on.
Right.
Sure.
In '63 when
What
I
did you mean
started.
by not strong enough?
I didn't know that if I could stand back from the temptation to be so focused on acquisition of stock and money and stuff. Instead of focusing on the priestly ministry.
And in poverty, and the
Yeah.
Jesuits and the religious.
And, even if you're a diocesan priest,
Sure.
you have to take care of yourself.
Yes.
That's part of their vocation, and they have to prepare for their retirement. But you can become focused on some of that instead of on of service to your people.
Sure.
And I was the kind, I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think I was strong enough to withstand that temptation.
Know thyself.
That's healthy.
That's when I began to think about religious life. And even one of the priests in the parish said, "You ought to be a religious." You know, he said that to me, you know, which is odd.
Yeah.
But he just out of the clear blue, he said that to me. I said, no, I didn't think so. But it stuck there, I guess. And that was junior year, we moved to another neighborhood, and just a few days after Christmas, back in '66, Christmas '66, I just said, I'm not going to be a diocesan priest. Just, it was one of those, and I think it was an inspiration, just sort of, it's not something I was contemplating, it was just came to my head.
It's an epiphany.
And then 3 days later, I said, I'm going to be a Jesuit.
Okay.
Wow.
And I'd never met a Jesuit in my life.
Must be God.
I never saw one.
Yeah.
I didn't read a life of Ignatius or anything like that. The only contact I ever had with any Jesuit background was in our 4th grade geography book. There was a story about Francis Xavier going to Japan, and how after the Jesuits started the church and they were really flourishing, there was a persecution. But the Jesuits told the Japanese Christians, we're going to be killed, and wait, there'll be other Jesuits, other priests will come here. And when they come, ask them these questions. Do they marry? Do they, are they under the Pope? And do they respect the Blessed Virgin Mary? And it was 250 years later, in the 1860s or 70s, a French mission went to Japan, and the chaplain was a Franciscan, and these Japanese came to him asking those 3 questions. They had passed it on.
Wow, that long.
Yeah, 250.
250 years
Incredible.
without contact from the West.
Wow.
And there were some 12,000 Catholics down in the south of Japan,
Yeah.
especially around, interestingly enough, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Wow.
There were a lot of these Japanese. And so they just all came out of the woodwork and were eager to see the priests.
Wow, that's good.
And so I said, well, these guys know what they're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the only contact I'd ever had with anything Jesuit ever.
Yeah.
And so then I began this process of investigating the society and, you know, writing to the vocation director, getting some literature and all that. I finished high school at the Diocesan Seminary, and I applied as a senior, but the society postponed me. They wanted me to go to a Jesuit school for a year. So I went to Loyola University in Chicago. And
Some of the greats were postponed. St. Thomas Aquinas.
yeah. So it worked. Now, right in February of that junior year high school, after I'd first said that, I sort of popped out. You know, at the time, the Vietnam War was getting a little more hot. And I said, Dad, I'd like to sign up early and go on, you know, to fight over there, because the communists were doing terrible things.
Sure.
Wow.
And he said, no, you can't. I won't give you permission. And I could tell when my dad said something, he meant it. You know, I'd learned that plenty of times. Dad was not someone, there were times you could negotiate, but not often. And that was definitely not one of them. I just knew. So, well, then it somehow came up, and I just sort of blurted out, well, I'm becoming a Jesuit. And my dad turned to my mom and said, what the hell is he talking about this time?
What's a Jesuit?
And she explained, she said, he turned and said, the day you become a Jesuit priest, that's the day you're out of my will. And sure enough, on the day of my first Mass, he disinherited me. Now, I couldn't have kept it anyway.
Right.
But even I wasn't so much of a wise guy that I said that. I just let it slide.
Yes.
But
Wow.
But he did, and I was out of his will. But he made me the executor, because I
You were really good with stocks.
I didn't have, and you know what? He had kept that stock, that first stock, because I hadn't cashed it in yet. The others I'd cashed in to pay for my tuition at Loyola, but I didn't need to cash that one. And so I said, well, we have the same name. My dad and I had the same name.
Oh, yes.
And so I just gave it to him, and he, never cashed it in. And so
Wow.
it just kept increasing,
Yeah, yeah.
and there were all these, it would double, they
Split and-
split
yeah.
the stock, and so there were a lot more shares, and the company was originally called Rockwell Standard, became North American Rockwell, who did real well.
Yes. yes. I
Build
was-
it. They were originally just making engine parts, but they moved into airplanes and then into jets
Yep. Yep. Wow.
Well,
and rockets.
And rockets. And the stock just rocketed.
Yes.
Kept rocketing.
Wow. And so you're then you graduated. You had your first mass. And then where were you at? Where was your first mass?
Well, my family, of course, had lived in Chicago, but in 71 or 2, they moved to Michigan.
I was negative 10.
Yeah, see, and well, I'd already left home. I was in, in the Jesuits already, and they moved to Michigan. I found them anyway, and
You're a hunter. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. And they actually moved on to a farm.
Oh.
Dad bought a book, read it 3 times, and built a house.
Whoa.
Dad was a mechanic. He had never been a carpenter.
Yeah.
And the only he brought someone in to help with a few of the specialties, like putting up plaster and stuff, putting up the dries.
Okay.
rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, he built everything himself.
Yeah.
And in fact, he overbuilt, because he wanted to make sure. But strong house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, Mom told him how the kitchen and everything was going to be.
Of course.
But they and he tried raising cattle. He couldn't make any money, but he went back to what he was good at, and that was selling cars.
Look at the size of that trunk. You could put 3 bodies in there.
So he did about that.
Okay.
So I had my first mass in the small town in Michigan, and as it turns out, even though the parish was old, over 100 years by that point. They'd never had a first mass in that church. So I was the first one to have a first mass there.
Oh, wow.
St. Basil's in South Haven, Michigan.
Wow.
Beautiful church. If you ever get up to southwestern Michigan, you got to go there because the church is built on a bluff overlooking Lake Michigan. Wow. It's just stunning. Wow. It's just stunning.
How far is that from Ada, Michigan?
Ada, Michigan? I don't know.
Well, it's the
I laugh because your
it's
daughter's Ada.
It's the Muslim hub of the United States.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, just curious.
Is that near Detroit? It must be near Detroit.
Possibly?
never
Yeah,
heard of
see,
it.
that's on the other side of the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. And so then.
Yeah, it's just a farm
yeah.
community, and they weren't even in town. That town was 9 miles away. They were in tiny little crossroads.
Yeah.
Pullman.
Yes. And so then you moved into where'd you go from there? I'm just curious.
first-
Oh yeah. My first
Jesuits
I
are
was
adventurous.
ordained in. I was actually the youngest Jesuit priest in the order at that time. I was, I entered in '68 into the society, and I was in high school during the council, so you can imagine that there's a lot of turmoil going on in the church, and I would characterize things this way. People in charge had a lot better idea of what they did not want and not what they did want.
Okay.
That was a characteristic of the church in those days.
Yeah.
And that was true with our course of studies. They knew they didn't want the old course, but they didn't know what exactly they did want. And they experimented in a lot of ways on me.
Yeah.
and my classmates.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes compare that period to the way I used to go to my buddy, again, one of these 3 guys, my buddy Ed Sika's house. His dad had given him a chemistry set. And I'd go in there and look at those chemicals and try mixing a few of them, hoping for an explosion. but always ending up with a gray mess. Never got the explosion.
That's what happens when you mix all the colors together. It's just
That's
great.
it. That's it.
So you're characterizing that as how the church was at that time.
Yep. That's, that they would, hope for an explosion of vocations and evangelism, but you just sort of got this bland mess. And so I kept doing whatever they told me. And when I was, 26, the rector of the seminary said, I don't know how you did it, but you're done.
Oh.
You finished this is your last course. You're finished.
Wow.
And I said, well, I just did what you told me.
Why did you put that weapon together so quickly, Gump?
You told me to, Drill Sergeant.
Obedience.
For once.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
so they ordained me. And everybody was really surprised because I was so young. Usually our guys were in
you were
32,
young.
33. And here I was 26.
It is young.
And so I got ordained. And at the same time, one of the Jesuits had proven himself to be fairly incompetent at teaching in one of our high schools. And the only other Jesuit in the theology department had been transferred to a different high school to be the principal. So there were no Jesuits in the theology department. And this is when the vocation crisis was starting to be a little bit of a crunch.
Okay.
Wasn't real bad yet, but the crunch was on. And the provincial kind of panicked, said, we can't have a theology department at one of our premier high schools without a Jesuit in it. Pacwa, you go.
Okay.
And so they sent me, and I didn't want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't like teaching I taught high school for a couple of years in Cincinnati, and I learned a lot. It was, it was fun, but I thought, well, that's over. But it wasn't. Yeah. And I even told the guys over at the high school, I don't like high school kids. I don't like high school teaching, and I hate the suburbs because I grew up in the city.
Yeah.
And they said, and they were laughing. They thought I was joking. I don't know why people don't. I tell them exactly. So they sent me there, and after a year and a half, the superior, who joked around about that, said, "Oh, you really meant that, didn't you?" I told you that. So, but anyway, I taught high school, and it was the area. Again, this is part of the experimentation that was going on. When I took moral theology, they were experimenting. It was dumb. That was the worst part of our theology training, except for canon law. That was worse. That was, we had the canon lawyer was actually a Franciscan at another Catholic seminary, and we shared classes. So we took it from him, and he said, well, they're coming up with a new code. We don't know what's going to be in it, so I won't teach you anything. Well, that's not really a good plan.
Yeah.
Because I never, ever learned how to do an annulment process.
Oh, yeah.
I always had to give it over to the parish priest. They know how to do that stuff.
Yes.
But they just didn't teach us because they didn't know.
Right.
So, but that was the worst course. The second worst was moral theology.
Wow.
And it was just, they wanted to do meta-ethics.
Oh.
Yeah.
Touchy subject.
Yeah, and what's the basic principle? And just with this theory, and then in the last quarter, you did a paper, a long paper, on a specific moral issue, and I chose birth control.
Good for you.
In the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, this is 70.
70s.
This is 76.
Even still.
76. And I came out in my paper in favor of the teaching of Humanae Vitae. I supported it and defended it and gave, reasons. When I was up for ordination, the rector said, is this true that you wrote a paper supporting Humanae Vitae?
What?
Say what?
We had some complaints in the Informaciones about, there are these, they give these forms to people, 6 different people that are live with you, professors and fellow seminarians, and said, "Is this true? Because this was a complaint made about you that you supported Humane Vitae." Now think about that.
That is unreal.
But it was the times.
And can you just, for our audience, our listeners, explain a little bit of Humane Vitae?
Yeah, Humane Vitae was an encyclical by Pope Saint Paul VI in July of 1968. It came out 4 weeks or so, if that, before I joined the society.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And in there, he explained why we cannot accept the birth control pill as a moral form of contraception.
Yeah.
And he said that if we do, and this was the key argument, that it separated the aspect of procreation in marriage from love. And he was spot on.
Oh, it's so prophetic.
The night, because it came out on a Sunday, and there's no news on Sundays. So a number of the folks on the left held a press conference for that Sunday evening, and they were against Humane Vitae. Well, that became big news. Catholic theologians against the Pope,
Yeah.
and that dominated the news about Humane Vitae, and the message was missed. But that theologian was at the time at Catholic University, made the point for the Pope by doing what he said would happen. He separated love from procreation.
Yeah.
And later, and it was within, in fact, I remember watching him in the 80s when he was being brought up by Pope St. John Paul for, silencing and being kicked out of teaching at any Catholic university.
Yeah.
This is Father Charles Curran from, I think, the Diocese of Rochester, New York. And he was forbidden to teach at Catholic schools.
Wow.
And he was on, was it 60 Minutes or Nightline, one of those ABC News programs.
Yeah.
CBS, whatever
Mainstream.
Yeah. And he said, they asked him, well, do you think that it's morally acceptable to use birth control pill? Yes. Condoms? Yes. To having a divorce? Yes.
Oh.
And divorce and remarriage? Yes, it can be.
Wow.
And adultery? Yes, it can be morally acceptable. And abortion.
Oh my!
See, and that was exactly what Pope St. Paul VI had warned about.
Yeah.
You separate, because what Curran did is he taught that love has the priority. So if you really love the person you're committing adultery with, and there are other extenuating circumstances, for instance, your spouse is bound to a bed, it was a hospital bed, and can't have relations and things, that could be morally acceptable to commit adultery.
Wow.
It's reminding me of, the Ishmael and Isaac.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hagar.
Hagar.
Yeah.
Abraham.
Abraham and Hagar.
Abraham and Hagar. Yeah.
Well, that wouldn't be relevant because that was legal in those days.
Oh, okay.
See, you don't know enough
before the
about
law.
Middle Bronze Age law, do you?
No, I do not. Yes.
Just educated.
In Middle Bronze Age law, if a woman could not conceive,
Yeah.
she could make the decision to
Interesting.
give her slave to her husband.
Okay.
And that's why you see Sarah giving
Yes.
Hagar to Abraham. But when Hagar starts to be a little bit proud that she's pregnant and Sarah's not, Sarah, not Abraham, had the authority to dismiss her.
Wow. Wow.
It was not up to the husband either to give the slave girl
she was the one that
or
sent
to
him
send
away?
her away. That's why she
Okay.
sends her.
Okay.
And that's I believe in the law codes found at Newsy. Probably never been there.
Nope.
That ain't in Texas.
No.
No, never been.
Yeah. You see, you got to brush up on your Bronze Age,
Middle
Bronze Age
Middle
law
Bronze
code.
Yes.
I'm still trying to brush up on Texas law.
Yeah, I know it. And stay within it.
Or stay out of it.
Yeah. We'll stick within the bounds of it.
Yeah.
Well,
within the boundaries, yeah.
So that's different. But, in this case, it's, the part about in sickness and health, until death do you part. He was one to say, no, if there's love involved, it's okay. And fornication was okay for him.
Wow.
If you love. No, that's not really love.
Yeah.
I know what that is.
Yeah, gosh.
And so, this
The
is
opposite of truth.
Yeah, and even abortion. And I remember being watching that interview with one of my very liberal Jesuit friends. He said, "That's it. He's done."
Oh,
even knew.
Yeah, so he did that in public on national TV.
Yeah.
He said, "That's it. He's done."
Yeah.
And he was there after that. It was because the case was still pending at that point.
Yeah.
And once he said all those things, so he ended up at SMU. Teaching more theology there, and he had moved away from that issue because that's
Southern Millionaires University.
There you go. So at any rate, I got in a little bit of trouble. But then when the rector asked me that you wrote this, is it true? I said yes, it is. But here was my reasoning, and so I bam, gave it all later. I said, okay, well you thought about it. We'll let you be ordained. Wow. But it was an issue.
Whoa.
It wasn't it?
Really?
It was an issue.
Wow.
Yep. So those are the times.
Wow.
Yes.
Those were the times. So and this is something I learned a big lesson from that. On one hand, you always see the left saying you got to be open-minded.
Yes.
But once they get in power, that is the last thing that they are.
Yeah.
They are absolute about their position. They're open-minded until they get in control. And then once they're in power, that's that.
Yeah. Wow.
And that rector actually was he was not mean, he was not regimented, he was a good thinking man. I really and a friend, and I respect him a lot, but I learned from that and saw that put into play in a lot of other places all over the place.
And with the Jesuits and the explosion of education across our country, right? I mean, they were in the education system, and without Catholicism, I mean, I wouldn't have an education.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, see, this is one of the other things too. In the 1960s, Catholics and Jews both did an amazing feat. Catholics and Jews had come to this country from Eastern and Southern Europe, and some from, like here, a lot of Germans from Central Europe. But from the 1880s forward, lots of folks from Eastern Europe came here, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and actually it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Southern Europe, Italy, and all that. And they were poor, and Jews came from Eastern Europe and Russia, the Russian Empire. And they were dirt poor, oftentimes illiterate or semi-literate, and ready to work and make it in America,
Yeah.
And my grandmother told us, when I came to this country, they told me the streets were paved with gold. She said they weren't. They were paved with, I put it, dung. That wasn't the word she used, but
Yeah.
but that's
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And so she would say it in Polish with vulgar word, but at any rate, she so they worked hard.
Yeah.
And the Catholic nuns and priests and brothers who got the schools going, and eventually a lot of lay people too, but it was mostly the religious and clergy. By 1960, the Jews and the Catholics became the two best educated religious groups in the country, and the two wealthiest. Jews were better educated and wealthier, and Catholics were second best educated and second wealthiest. And we outstripped the colonial religions.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's the amazing thing.
Yes.
Right, because they were here first.
Well, yeah, they were here in the colonial days.
Yeah.
You know, the colonies were officially Puritan colony in Massachusetts and Congregationalist in Connecticut, Baptist in Rhode Island, Episcopalian in New York, Virginia, and the southern colonies, and Presbyterian in New Jersey.
Wow.
They had official religions in those days. And the only two colonies that had freedom of religion were first the Catholic colony of Maryland. That was the first colony to have religious freedom. And then Pennsylvania. And then, because of religious freedom law, Puritans moved into Maryland colony, overwhelmed the Catholic population, and then made Catholicism illegal. So the Catholics had to, that's why the first diocese was in Baltimore and Philadelphia.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So that's an interesting history, you know, and following it through and how it affected your life as you were, you know, growing up and coming into your faith and getting out into the world, because that's the Jesuit thing to do, right? Is
Well, you've mentioned that you're starting your autobiography. I feel like we've gotten a good preview of it here.
yeah, exclusively, right?
I didn't give you the exciting parts either.
You got to buy the book for that.
Exactly.
You know that. Matter of fact, I just started. I'm going to have a chapter about when I started hunting. I started hunting late.
Yeah.
Because in an earlier chapter of the book, I talk about when I was a novice. You know, way before ordination, my second year novitiate was at an inner city parish. And I was working with a street gang, Mexican street gang in that neighborhood. And I got shot at 3 times, knifed at gun, or mugged at knife point. And a passerby saw it, and he said, "Stick him! Stick him!"
What?
I said, moving on. I
like that idea.
Muévete.
But the guy didn't. He didn't stick me.
Oh, man.
But he had the knife point right in my side as he went into my pockets, and I had $10.
Wow.
In there. And it was actually something I was bringing over to the rectory because somebody had asked for a mass to be said. I didn't even have $10, you know.
To yourself.
No. So I gave that over for mass to be said. And they took that.
They took it.
Basically,
he took that.
Your point here is that you went from the hunted to the hunter.
Exactly. That is the story of my life right there. In Chicago, I was the hunted, and later on, I got to be the hunter.
Well, and I remember you said when we were hunting, and you're kind of sharing some of this, you said, I moved from Chicago to Detroit for safety.
That's how bad Chicago was for me, because I witnessed a friend of mine being murdered, and I had to leave town.
Yeah.
You know, because of that. That's when I started growing my beard.
Okay.
That was part of it. Yeah, haven't shaved it off since 1970.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some food in it. I could tell maybe that was from
that was some tamales from Christmas of '60.
From the 70s.
Saving it for later.
I thought it was cool that you know, they put you in a Catholic high school to teach, and you're like, oh gosh, what the heck's going on here? And you've been teaching ever since.
Yeah.
In your own
well,
way.
see, that's one of the things too about God's providence. I really did not like high school kids.
Yeah.
I like them better now. But I couldn't really understand, because the high school I went to was a seminary. And there was a little bit of monkey business, but nothing, no bad mischief going. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, we had to study 3 hours a day. We took 2 languages, 4 years of Latin, 2 years of a modern language, plus all the other courses in high school. And, you know, it was required for us to go to Mass every day, daily rosary, weekly confession. This was all part of our training. So there was, you know, just a couple dumb things here and there the guys did as, you know, little tricks, but nothing much. And I could not understand, and I didn't like putting up with some of the nonsense these other kids were doing in school. I want to focus on the subject, and they needed more discipline. So, it took me a while I like high school kids now. I taught a course last year, during the COVID thing. This one high school couldn't find a teacher, so I did a course for a Catholic school in Atlanta on Western civilization. And I really enjoyed them. I really did.
Yeah.
They were good. So I think I was just too mature to be teaching high school. That was part of it.
I always told my high school youth, I said, hey, look, there's no rules in this classroom, but if it's not about the subject, you got to go outside. And it allowed their minds to be open, and they looked at me like I had 3 eyeballs, and but they respected it because they realized, hey, I can ask him any question I want.
Yeah.
And the subjects, might be like humane vitae or just being real. And their noses were stuffed in a textbook, and they'd been going to class all day long. And here comes CCD and youth ministry, and they didn't want their nose in a textbook. So we went to the heart, and it brought it right back to the mind.
Good.
Yes. So, yeah, it's those high school. And my oldest daughter oldest child is 12, and so we're getting at that age where the questions are coming, and the little,
especially from that one.
yes, Joan is her name.
She's your leader.
She's
fearless leader.
Oh, yeah, fearless indeed. And some of her friends are a little older, and I go outside.
She's mature.
Yeah. What are you guys playing? Pirates. And Joan's the captain.
Of course. Always has been, always will be. That's good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's awesome to hear your story.
Yes, thanks for sharing.
I was just going to say that one of the things about finishing off that high school time, and they saw that I really did not like high school, they let me go on to grad school.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They said, try it, see how you do. And
you've been studying ever since.
Yeah. Well, I went for a year before grad school to do advanced Hebrew and advanced Greek. And then as I did that advanced Hebrew and Greek, I did well, and so they let me apply to grad school and got accepted at a few colleges, but I went to Vanderbilt because they gave me the best scholarship.
Yeah.
So went there, and
they have a good trust.
Yeah. And so they do, and a lot of Yankee guilt money is what it is. Cornelius Vanderbilt had sort of taken over the Southern railroads after the war, and he made a lot of money. So I felt a little guilt.
The second largest trust behind the Vanderbilt Trust is right down the road in San Angelo, Texas.
Is that right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Huh.
It is. And it's pretty interesting to see some of the students who come from all around the world who get to go to Angelo State University, and it's pretty neat to see how it's affected people's lives and yours as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was great. So I got my doctorate and started teaching college.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So Vanderbilt, I guess it was kind of a melting pot, would you say?
Well, it's at core a Methodist seminary.
Okay.
And it was a seminary when Cornelius gave $1 million back, I think, in the 1880s.
Yeah.
And to make it into a university. It was only the 5th university in the country to offer a PhD.
Wow.
So it was really early on. And but along with the seminary, in the same building, there's the Graduate School of Religion. And so I was in the Graduate School of Religion, and then but I taught the seminarians. I team taught a course in Old Testament because that's my field.
Yeah.
I team taught a course in Old Testament with my dissertation director. So he would do the classes on Monday and Wednesday, which was a couple hundred kids, undergrads and seminarians. And about 75, 80 seminarians. And then on Friday, he would take the undergrads and teach them, and I would teach the seminarians.
Oh, yeah.
One of the great things about having taught high school, as much as I had difficulty teaching, I learned to teach because those little boogers in high school are sitting there all day long looking for every chink in your armor. And you got to figure out a way to entertain them and teach well so they get it. Well, that was great preparation for teaching at university. And I used to tell my colleagues that, in grad school, y'all should go teach at a high school before you take a university position so you learn how to teach. Because by grad school, you are well acclimated to boredom. And you can get away with it.
Exactly.
In high school, you cannot. You cannot.
You
They
have to
will
be on
teach
your
you. And
toes.
so I would teach these seminarians, and I said, we would be hit or miss with Professor Harrelson's lectures. We never missed your lectures.
Wow, that's great.
Because we never knew what you were going to say next.
Absolutely. I've heard a lot of people talk about, Tony Robbins even says that, we're no longer in the information age. Everybody's got information. It's right there in your cell phone. You can find anything you want. Why are we in the information age? It's there. It's like water. We're in the entertainment age. And you say this about the youth.
Even more so
how
now.
much, yes, it's all about entertainment. And so, Rome Boys and what we do here, and you with EWTN and Ignatius Productions and wanting to be in the media, while our goal isn't to necessarily be entertaining, we find that people are entertained by some of the things we talked about.
Yeah.
But it's the truth.
Yes.
And people
Gotta
seek.
stay focused on that mission at all times.
That's right.
At all
But
times.
we have these characters up here, Captain America and Saint Michael the Archangel, and we talk about to our kids like.
St. Michael's one of the characters?
Beyond that, yes.
How interesting the saints are, and
that's right.
Angel Gabriel, Angel Michael, and
Well, see, as a matter of fact, I've been hearing confessions now for 45 years.
Oh,
all right? And I started hearing confessions right after ordination. The Legion of Mary contacted me and asked if I'd come down to Skid Row and hear confessions there.
Yeah. Wow.
And one of the things I would say about sinners, they are boring. They do the same sins.
Repeat. Yeah.
It's the saints who are very interesting.
Interesting.
Wow.
Because they look at someone like Mother Angelica and what an interesting person she was.
Yeah.
But the sin is pretty much the same stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why people are afraid to go to confession. We heard it all.
Been there, done that.
Amen.
Well, I didn't say that.
Maybe not
Sometimes maybe, sometimes not.
Sometimes they've done stuff.
But been there, heard that.
I've been there, heard that.
Yeah.
Goodness. That is a good priest shirt, Been there, heard that. Yeah. That's good.
We're into confession.
Yeah.
But though on the other hand, one of my favorite hunts that I ever did, among my very top favorite hunts, was hunting wild boar with dogs and a knife. And I stabbed a 300-pound boar with a knife in the heart. With the help of a dog. You're a team with that dog.
Yeah.
He depends on you, and you depend on him.
Yeah,
Wow.
wow.
He was a great dog, Riley. I love that dog.
Yeah.
Pit bull, and he was great. And after you killed the pig, you got to let him calm down. He's adrenaline was up.
Riled up.
Sure.
But we killed a 300-pound boar and a 250-pound sow that night with that Riley and a knife. And I have a picture of me in between those two pigs. We put them on the truck, and I'm sitting in between them. And I want to put that picture on my confessional door with a sign saying, "Tell me everything." I can make you squeal. That's not nice. Don't do that.
No. I love it.
Yeah, before I went into that confessional, I'd
Better not hold it
Boy,
back.
serious.
Oh yeah.
So, Father, when's the autobiography going to come out?
When I finish it.
Okay, so you don't have a deadline. So
I'm starting to find that, first of all, most of the time when I'm writing, unless I'm just not near someplace. But most of the time when I'm at home, always when I'm at home, I write before the Blessed Sacrament. This is also something that's part of prayer and meditation. But I also got to check on a lot of things like dates and things like that, just to make sure I get the story straight, because there'll be fact checkers, as there should be. But I don't want to falsify anything that I've done. So I'm careful on that. And one of the cool things, like in this chapter I'm writing about hunts, I've got photographs of all the critters I killed. And the nice thing about these modern digital phones and cameras is that they keep the date.
Oh yeah.
And over the years, I organized each year of hunt. I put into different files, so I've got it well organized.
Nice.
That's
My
great.
room is a mess. My house is pretty bad. My office is awful, but I have my notes clear.
You know where your
You're
stuff
organized
is.
there.
Notes are organized.
Notes are organized.
I can relate.
So it takes a little while to make sure I get all that straight. And a lot of times too, as I'm telling some of these stories, I remember, oh yeah, that happened too. But it's been cool because I have people who were with me at those different stages of my life, and a lot of them are still alive. So I have them read it.
Oh, great.
Or even better yet, I like reading it to them.
Yeah.
So that I can hear the rhythm of it, and also they can say, well, it's not quite like, but usually they say, you remember more than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good too, because kind of hearing how the reader will consume the information, and that's great.
And overall, I've got a pretty good memory. So
yeah. This is really healthy for you to do too. Talk about
it is
examination of conscience. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it's something that's also prayerful.
Yeah.
That
it's like an icon, right? Like painting an icon.
See how God has worked in your entire life, and just be blown away by how great He is.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, like I mentioned, how my dad was very opposed to me being a priest, and he was opposed to me being a priest from the time I was 12. Yeah, he didn't like the idea, and he would argue with me on a regular basis, and so we had our tension. That's a lot of fathers and sons do. But then I also see more and more how I'm a lot like him.
Yeah.
Not always the good things, not always the bad things. It's just the various parts of.
Well, we're given a fallen nature too, right?
Yeah,
So,
did it come around, or you want to include that in the book? And
no. Yeah, that's definitely going to be part of the book. And I can see it more as I write. So.
Yeah. Great. Any inspiration on any other autobiographies on how you're writing it by any chance?
No, I'm just sort of writing it like I remembered.
That's good.
Yeah, just write it like I remember.
That's good because it's unique. It's you.
Yeah.
It's uniquely.
Yeah.
And we've been given that advice, in our show.
Yeah.
Don't try to script your situation.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Live your life. You're unique.
No.
You're uniquely you.
When I first came to EWTN full time, I've been making shows at EWTN since February of '84.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was. I always remember because it was February 29th of 1984. I used to tell Mother I was her Sadie Hawkins Day date.
Oh yeah, tell the story, will you please?
Yeah, she said, and she would say when I said that, you must have been hard up. I said, actually, you invited me. Sadie Hawkins.
That's right. Yeah.
But when I came full time at EWTN, people were pretty upset. They didn't like it because they missed Mother. And frankly, I had a little bit of a difficulty because Deacon Bill Steltemeyer, who was president of the network, Mother was CEO, chairman of the board. She was chairman of the board.
Yes.
But Bill was the president. And he was telling us, Mother going to be back in 5 months. 5 months, you're going to be back. It'll be awesome. And that's how he sort of talked like Foghorn Leghorn.
Got a mouth like an outboard motor. All the time. Put, 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 put.
A lot of ways. And so, I knew better. This stroke, really damaged the left side of her brain.
You knew her.
Where the speech patterns were. And it was there was a dead spot.
Yeah.
And she did pretty well at first, especially of her brain rerouting around that spot. But there was a bad hemorrhage on that left side, and there's just part of that.
Yeah.
That part of the brain was dead. You can't revive dead brain tissue.
That's right.
Gone.
It's gone.
And I just, and people, 5 months later, well, it's 5 months. Where's mother? She's not back. She can't talk.
Yeah.
And that put me in a tough place. And one lady even called in during a live show, said, "Well, you're just not Mother Angelica." And I said, then, to your point before, I cannot be a wise old nun. I can't.
Yeah.
Right. I have to be what I am.
Sure.
That's all I know.
Right.
If I tried to be Mother Angelica, it'd be fake.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Amen.
And, but I also learned that point from Mother. She was herself.
Yeah. Right.
She was a wise old nun
Yep.
and a wise guy. She was a smart aleck.
Wise guy,
Yeah, exactly. She was a smart aleck and good at it, but also charitable and loving. But she grew up rough.
Yeah.
And so, I cannot be what she is, and I can't be what anybody else is.
Right.
That's,
I'd say it's worked out, Father.
Oh, absolutely.
and that's the way it goes. And you guys can tell that there's not too much difference from the way I am on camera and off.
100%.
No.
For better or for worse.
You get what you get.
No, I
Worse
think
sometimes.
Well, I'd say, look, I think it's good for people to know that. I mean, because you don't have to put on a show, and you don't have to worry about being proper and holy on camera. It's just how you live your life.
Be authentically human.
We went to the taxidermy as soon as you pulled into town, standing out in the middle of the only grocery store in this little area. And you said, "Hey, I got a bobcat in the truck. Can I go over to the taxidermy and drop him off?" And
That is great.
yeah, sure. So we move all the Lebanese food out of the ice chest.
So folks understand, I didn't cook it. I was helping out at a Maronite parish over in Louisville, Texas.
Yep.
And Lebanese women do not want you to go hungry. And secondly, they cook Lebanese style 3 times more than you can eat.
Yes, that's the
Just
style.
saying.
It's good stuff.
We ate well all week, or all the 2 days we were with you. Oh man, it was great. It was some really good food.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you went in and you brought the cat, and you said to the taxidermist there, I strangled this cat, and he was like, "Really?" And he said, "Well, there's a story behind it. My boss, he's always listening."
Yeah.
So
You gotta watch how you tell it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't make it up. Boss is listening.
that's right. And to my point, I mean, you are who you are. I mean, there was no camera rolling when we rolled up to the taxidermy there.
That was fun.
It's just who you are, and I really appreciate
Again,
it.
for better or for worse.
Yeah. For
Father-
sickness and health, and
That's our side.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Well, Father, we really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you so
It was
much.
my
And
pleasure.
the last few days, I mean, this has been great. We've held you up enough.
Well, thank you much. Thank you. I had a good time. Let me end with a blessing.
Absolutely, please.
Lord bless you all and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and lead you in all of your ways by his peace. May Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank
and
you, Father.
have a great new year.
Oh, that's
Yes,
right.
yes.
Here we are. Yeah.
Now you just put the pressure on Joe because he's got to edit it so he can get it out there because the new year's on its way.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Thanks, Father.
Anything I can do to help?
Absolutely. In the meantime,
Get Leo to help you.
oh yeah, he's a great help. He's a great help. Yeah. Knocks cameras over and turns them off and all that great stuff.
That's
Thanks,
his
Leo.
2-year-old.
Uh-huh. And he's every bit of it.
Have to do a cameo.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Co-editor.
Co-editor. I'll put a little tag at the bottom of his. Yeah. So in the meantime,
Be bold.
be real.
Be Catholic. God bless.
Forgot my line.